Hi and welcome to the Creative Pathway. My name's Fiona.
And my name's Keith.
And today we're here to talk about perspective.
Yeah.
Mindset.
States of mind, feelings, basically direction, psychological understanding, positivity.
Yeah. How to change things.
Yeah, how to alter what we want to alter, basically.
Because we're all a part of a program.
Yeah.
Beginning, of course, in childhood.
Okay. So basically, what we're looking at is that each of us is not ourselves. We are a set of programs, like a software that has been programmed, yeah, by external forces until we get to a certain age when we have been taught how to program ourselves, 5, 6, 7 years old. And the first programs we get are the most powerful ones because they came from parents who we trusted absolutely because they were our caregivers.
Yeah, and parents that we subconsciously copy.
Absolutely.
When we're really, really small.
And possibly there's some viability with the genetic theory, although there's a lot of debate about that. How much is nurture and how much is nature kind of debates. You know?
Yep.
And that's still going on. That's been for about 80 years now at least. And then there's of course a spiritual perspective where we can look at psychological from the spirituality of psychology as people like Madeleine Blavatsky and Alice Bailey and others have done. So
and then soul energy, reincarnation.
Yeah, which is part of the spiritual perspective of psychology. So we're going to look at this in the way of moving forward. Because I mean, we've been working many years together with this work. And if one thing that I can say, and I think you'll probably verify this, people come and say, I can't change, or I want to change, or I'm not happy, or I keep doing this destructive thing, and they want answers to how they can change that process.
But don't you feel that most people don't even think about change until they have really hit a brick wall?
I don't know, I need some tea to answer that, I think. Yeah. The Great British Mind Stimulant. You see. Oh, now I've got it. What did you say?
Yeah. No, I was thinking about a lot of people, they have to hit a brick wall more than once before they recognise that perhaps there's something they need to change.
Yeah. I think this process. We've recently been back to England. We drove to England, right up through beautiful parts of Spain and through the most gorgeous Pyrenees mountains where the Qatar people had lived and hidden from the Catholics all those years ago. And amazing history and eagles. I mean, 18, 20 we counted eagles, separate eagles, amazing. And we visited our homes. Fiona was visiting her sick mother and I was visiting my sick mother, and we spent some time together. Then we separated. I went further north, and Fiona was in Yorkshire, the great county of Yorkshire.
God's country.
Apparently God's country. Which God? I'm not certain. I think he was a warlike
The
God.
Yorkshire God.
Yeah, but he was the one that made black pudding, and only English people will understand.
And Yorkshire pud.
I know, Swedish people and think of it as blood pudding. But anyway, so, and there we visited and learned things about ourselves together individually. And it was a kind of circling round to complete something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah. Even, I mean, we went through the Qatar country, didn't we, and saw a lot of different things there.
Which we both feel past lives, Well, I feel
connected.
Yeah, connected, because we believe in past lives now.
And unfortunately, my past life in France was not one of notoriety in that way.
Notoriety.
Notoriety, you know, notoriety, yes.
Yeah. Well, maybe it was
I actually have a very, very, not only vivid recollection of being a French person, but also I've had confirmation, unfortunately, that I was that French person. But I was a man, and my job was to chop people's heads off on the guillotine. And I have subsequently met people who have actually, made that connection with me. So, yes, that was my French connection.
So I always sleep with one eye open.
And your sword by your side.
And my sword from another life by my side. But basically, our work has been connected to freeing up potential, we could say. So there's two ways of looking at one-to-one work or group work with people, especially when those people talk about pain or inability to deal with life. One way is to look as the early Freudian or Jungian people would look at as blockages being subconscious blocks. With Freud, it was from the childhood, and with Jung, it was from the childhood plus what he called the collective unconscious.
Can I just, right, subconscious blocks. All right, I think some of them are subconscious, but if you are trying and living to live in awareness, then you can recognise when those subconscious blocks come into your life again and again and again. So then they aren't subconscious if you're honest.
No, and that's what Zen masters say. And that's what, you know, that everything is in the consciousness. You just got to be still enough to find it, to allow it to arise in the system. So there's different ways of reaching that stuff, isn't it? You know.
But most people reach it full on, 200 miles an hour, brick wall in front of them, bang, and they do that a few times and then suddenly think, oh,
it's too painful.
This is happening again.
So when we look at psych and we look at moving forward, we look at states, we have to look at something, and everyone in almost every system, whether it's normal psychological systems, almost everyone, man for man, woman for woman, will look at it this way. Patterning, this patterning, structures of patterns. And so we found in our work we can simplify this by, I can't see the computer, so I'll put this in. We can simplify this by understanding that some of these patterns are helpful to us and some are not.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, the simple way of explaining a pattern is, right, things trigger us off. So, for instance, if we walk into someone's house and they are baking bread, maybe it triggers a memory of walking into a grandparent's house when they were baking. And we will suddenly have that feeling of visiting a grandparent. And that is a good memory. That's a feeling that we go back to and think, wow, that's good. But in the same way, the negative things that impact on us also bring back those same feelings, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the major thing is what we want them to do is clear the pathway. So I mean, this word, these are keywords, aren't they? These are symbolic keywords in all structures. You know, I mean, the great Western psychologist Carl Gustav Jung, he really studied symbology, and how it affected the psyche, and the collective symbology and the collective unconscious, which basically the collective unconscious is everything that we do as a collective, i.e. humanity or a nation, without thinking about it, and we call it normal. We call it normal because everyone else does it. But it's not normal. For example, when white people first went to Australia and they were starving, and the Aboriginal local people used to sneak over and leave them a jar of maggots or insects for them to eat to stop them starving. They would wake up in the morning and throw them away and thinking that there was some kind of nasty thing that they were doing when they were trying to just feed the white,
helpful.
the stupid white people who didn't know that they should eat some protein, and maggots were good protein. So, you know, this is misunderstandings that are funny, but we learn from them. And I think one way of looking at your psyche and the block stuff is that it actually, all the things that you fear at some point become really funny. When you get past them, you think, how the heck was I so afraid of that? And once you get that, then you get I talk about mindsets because I think it's very important. The mindset is a structure that we have that changes. Fiona doesn't like this word as much as I do. She likes to work with the emotional energies more. I like to work with the mind energies because they're interlinked anyway. And I think the mindset is basically what some psychologists call Gestalt, which means patterning. And that patterning is very important to understand in yourself because it's mainly 99% until you begin to work with yourself, unconscious. It's been created by your mother, father, your childhood, the society you grew up in, the school, the religion, and everything else that has given you ideas and told you that those ideas are the truth.
Yeah, but I also firmly believe that mindset isn't just emotional. Mind, it's emotional.
Yeah, it's a spectrum, isn't it? You
Yeah.
can't just, yeah.
Because everything is a feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, right, for instance, I buy that lavender water.
Yeah, it's lovely, that.
But why do I like that lavender water so much? Because when I was a child, Grandma used to have it always.
And why do I like it so
her.
much?
Because your grandmother probably
splashed
had
it everywhere.
Yes. Yeah. And these are things that set off. They set off emotions, but they also set off thinking.
Yeah.
So, mindset, emotional set. I can go with a connection between all of it.
Yeah.
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 So if we look at that individually, individual psychological or personal work, and collectively, we can see that in both the collective, which basically means more than one person, the group, or even as far as a nation, or further, the collective has a whole set of ideas and responses and emotional patterning which is normal. Yet that is not normal for someone else who lives in another part of the world and lived in a totally different environment, whose language has got different linguistic structures to it and creates different feelings. There you go, back to the feelings. Words create feelings. So if you say, I was hurt by my father, for example, then every time you say it, you recreate the hurt and you strengthen that hurt because you are claiming this as a truth.
And you're strengthening the feeling.
And you, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I actually said that.
Did you?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I might not have done, but I thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
So you continue with it. So you strengthen the feeling, and as a worker with a person, and you get a feeling that they get stuck on, and they keep repeating the words, and you can see them getting more and more deeply into hurt or powerlessness or a state of mindset or emotional patterning, which is just bogging them down further and further. What do you do?
Well, the thing about these feelings, thoughts. They all have to have triggers.
Yeah.
And the thing is, once you find a trigger, then it's a real simple process of stop. And right, working to a place of acceptance, you've got to use honesty, and you've got to stop. And it really boils down to those three issues,
Okay.
if you like.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, okay, you loved France.
Yeah.
And because that was your connection to your soul energy,
The Qatar.
the Qatars.
Yeah.
And that
2 or
was
3
a
lifetimes
really,
at least.
really wonderful thing for you. But before we drove through Germany that time, you always said, I'm never going to Germany because of your connection to being a little Jewish boy. And yet, when we did go through it and you saw it
I
with
loved it.
new eyes, yeah, you loved it.
Yeah, I love Germany.
But if you hadn't been prepared to see it
I
with
love
new
to hear the
eyes,
language, everything.
Yeah.
In German.
Yeah. because in essence, you were a
And I
little
avoided
Jewish
it.
boy,
Who spoke German.
but you were German.
Yeah.
Yes.
Until they told me I was Jewish, I was German. Yeah.
Yes, you were German.
Yeah.
So, but when we went back and we drove through it was a different feeling for you. So you were able to let go of those feelings.
Loved it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it.
So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to kind of point out that it is how you're seeing and thinking and choosing to feel about something.
The past life thing is very complex, and actually, we did those what do you call them? Podcasts, is it?
Yep, podcasts.
Yeah, and we actually talked in those podcasts about some of these experiences. So I'm not going to go. I don't think we should go over those. Take a look at our 1, 2, and 3 podcasts on the side, because we explained some of the experiences there, and we don't want to recap them.
No.
Waste time, but. If you're really interested in the process of healing from those things, there's some information there. But what we can say is whether you believe in past lives or not doesn't really matter. What matters is that you find the block. If you don't believe in past lives, then you believe, I would think, at least in psychological processes and all the work that's been done by psychologists, where they dig into the subconscious mind or the unconscious mind through hypnosis and through other techniques, Sigmund Freud with his watch, etc. You know, they all have techniques to alter the state of mind, consciousness, yeah, to go beyond or beneath the logical level to what we call the pre-verbal mind, or what modern psychologists often call the pre-verbal state, before you could speak. The things that happened to you before you could actually speak are the most powerful, because you couldn't speak about them, and they contain, for most people, the deepest of traumas. If there's a very deep trauma, it can be reactivated by experiences later in life, but it will tend to be in the pre-verbal time period, before you could speak, because you couldn't even express it in words. You could just scream.
Yeah, and even if you can speak, when you're very, very small, you have no words.
And no one tends to.
express it.
Well, in the old days, no one listened to you neither. And I've got a sneaking suspicion, no matter how good a parent people are, that most parents often are very hard pushing and don't always have time to listen to the children, if we are truthful about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 So it can be really, I mean, it can be really difficult ever to find the right words to express the feelings, which for me can be stronger in some ways than the thinking about it, but the feeling about it.
Okay, I would say that for 99.9% of people, it's probably the feeling that's stronger, not just you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But men in general have been taught, I don't say it's natural, have been taught in the past to ignore feeling and to verbalize. And women have been told that, oh, don't worry, poor you, you're emotional because you're a female.
Yeah, but I also feel that men need to be taught how to verbalise
Feelings.
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, we can admit that. I find it very hard to verbalise a feeling, don't I? Whereas you can verbalise feelings.
Always.
Yeah.
In length.
Yes. And using utensils like pot thrown at high speed. but basically, there is differences there that, and I'm not going to get into any sexual arguments about sexual roles, whether it's cultural or
but it's
nature
not,
or nurture. But basically, it tends to be women tend to feel more and verbalise more, and men sulk.
Well, yeah. Statistically,
or go to get depressed.
Statistically, for every 10,000 words we speak as females, you guys only speak 2,500 words.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about the massive gap that is in saying something, it's huge.
Yeah. Well, what I have seen through my life, especially from the north of England, where I came from, up on the Scottish border, is that men would slowly commit suicide or quickly commit suicide rather than speak about what showing themselves to be weak by talking about their fears.
I think, though, I mean, I do think that's changed a lot.
It's changing a lot now, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I do think that men are beginning to realise that it's okay to show their emotions.
Yeah.
But even so, showing emotions is one thing. Being able to verbalise it, however old you are, is another thing entirely.
I feel some of the best people I've studied have talked about the ability to verbalise precisely a feeling and to take you back to that point when you feel or think you first experienced that feeling as a child. And all therapists that use that technique seem to have just in my humble opinion, seem to have a longer effect of working than the ones that work with a rather emotional response of banging cushions and etc., because that I think releases the emotional top of it now, but it doesn't. If it doesn't make you conscious of the beginning of that feeling, then you haven't healed. You will heal if you can see the very beginnings. I believe so. You will heal if you see the very beginnings of that trauma. But the problem we have that some of it is pre-verbal. So when you felt it, you couldn't even describe it to yourself.
No.
So there's no mechanism in the brain to describe that feeling and exactly what happened, because you weren't at that state of cognitive ability as a baby to do that.
I also find myself that many people as well, they are brought up to revere the parents, so they find it very hard to be honest about how they feel about the parents. So they tend to justify actions by giving them reasons why they would do that or why they wouldn't do that.
Yes.
And the thing is, in a lot of ways, I really don't feel at the end of the day that all of that matters very much. What I feel is that you get to the point of acceptance of yourself and acceptance of what you feel. I mean, when I work with people, they always have one parent that is worse than the other parent. Always, if we go back and do childhood things. And I always take it down to a very, very simple thing. You love your mother. You love your father.
Yeah.
End of story. Yeah. And if you go from there, if you just accept that, you can actually draw a line.
And as you're saying that, I can psychically feel quite a few people will watch this, and some of them will react to that and say, no, I don't. I never loved her. She was horrible. I can never remember feeling love for her. And they will argue the exact opposite, that they never did.
Yeah.
But the truth is, if you get below that level of what they're saying and you really push deep, they'll suddenly start crying, and they will tell you that they wish their mother had loved them because they loved their mother and their mother didn't give them that love back.
Yeah, you see,
From their point of view.
yeah, you see, you've
view.
hit on a very solid point there. Okay, we all have an idea of what a mother or a father should be. We all have an idea of what a mother or father should love us, how they should show us that love. And very, very often when we get really, really down to the nitty-gritty, it's because they haven't shown us the love in the way that the child wanted them to. So they build up all these huge, and they can be massive stories.
Right.
But actually, when you get down to it, it's not that complicated.
No. I believe that a lot of the work that we've done in through the years has took two approaches. One of them is to get the person to be real about the childhood and not to fantasize false scenarios that didn't exist, and find out what really did exist and be truthful, and actually be truthful about their part, because I can remember as a child knowing if I said a lie to my father, my mother could get in trouble. And if I said a lie to my mother, my father could get in trouble. You know, and we don't admit that. You see, the parents did this or they said this. Now, we don't allow children to, we don't allow ourselves to say as children, we can be quite twisted by 6 or 7 years old, and we know that if we say this other adult's going to react. These are things people don't talk about in what I call fluffy therapy. But if you're doing real therapy, you've got to admit that sometimes as a child, I was very twisted, and I knew exactly what to say to Dad to get my mum in trouble. I knew exactly what to say to my mother to get my dad in trouble. We don't admit that. So we say we don't do proper therapy because kids are innocent, and if there's a problem, it's always the parents. Not true. In absolute deep study, that is not true. The child can be very twisted. I was a very twisted child.
So was I.
And I knew how to. But think about it. Think about that, because to blame the parent all the time, which has become a modern trend in modern psychological and sociological circles, is actually only a half-truth at best.
And that's where I jump in, because there are only two things that can bring change for you: honesty, choice, and acceptance. And
that's three things.
I knew you were going to say that. Yes.
She's always had trouble with counting.
But no, first of all, honesty, and I actually put that in some ways on a little pedestal of its own.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Mm-hmm. Because if we spend years and years and years blaming somebody else, whether it's parents or a partner or a grandparent or a teacher, then we're not being honest, because a lot of us we're awful. I mean, a lot of you watching the video now will have gone through teenage years with your children. It's awful. It's awful for you and it's awful for them. And there's no right or wrongs. They're just is events. So I think if you're honest with yourself and you say, well, okay, you know, when we have a child, and I'm speaking from experience, you have this dream of how this child's going to be, and it's going to grow up and it's going to do this and it's going to have that person in its life and blah, blah, blah. And whether you voice that or not, somewhere in the back of your head it's there, yes.
Yeah.
And then children grow up And I, for one, my mum had hopes and dreams for me. I was a complete disaster area.
Yeah.
And that was very hard because,
Don't worry, I was too.
you know, Mum had these hopes and dreams for me, and I destroyed probably every single one of them. And I was not that person. But it took me a long, long time to actually grow up and realise that I had my part in my stuff with my parents. And I think that that's something, you know, part of growing up is that honesty, isn't it?
Absolutely. To actually admit as a grown-up that, for example, you made your mother and father's relationship. No. Yeah, that's true. But I did that very carefully and calculatedly at times. But no, that you actually made their marriage and their relationship hell because you deliberately played one off against the other. Now, that's a hard thing to admit as a grown-up. But I know when my father, what I felt hurt me, well, sometimes he physically did hurt me, I would create things in my mother to hurt my father back. It would wind my mother up so that she would have a go at my father. Now, that is a thing that very rarely therapists take you into that level. It's all about what the parents did to you, how your parents abused you, how they neglected you, how this and how that. And it's very hard, it's harder, you see, to actually look at someone and say, but what kind of child were you? What kind of child were you? You know, because we're not innocent. They talk, there's this saying in books, innocent children. I'd like to find an innocent child. Have you seen them in the school playground? Have you seen how they rat on each other? Have you seen how they fight with each other? Study the subject. Children are not innocent.
No.
None of us are innocent.
No, because everybody's fighting for
Yeah.
their space.
We have an ego concept.
Yes.
And we have a self-image from very small. We start building a self-image. And we will fight for that self-image. And that self-image, as, you know, go back to Freudian psychology if you want. Basically, the boy child is jealous of the relationship with the father, with the mother, because the boy child loves his mother and the father is in the way.
Yeah.
And the reverse with the female, etc. These psychologists didn't say these things just for fun, they studied it. And these are things which are sometimes lost in modern psychology, this kind of outstepped and says this stuff's old psychology. But in practice of working with people, you will actually find, if people admit it, they went out of their way sometimes to hurt their mother or hurt their father, or do everything that they stand on everything they felt was sacred, like children whose parents, for example, were maybe born-again Christians, so the kids went out of the way to swear and come out of the religion or join a satanic group or anything at all which would upset their religious feelings. So let's be truthful about us. What kind of child were you, Keith? Who did you mess up? Not just who messed you up. If you want to find psychological healing, admit what you've done. Admit what you've done to other people, what you have, how you hurt other people. And I mean as a child, as a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old, this is the only way to truly heal. Admit that you sometimes were a rotten little you-know-what. And I've worked through this with myself, and I can see so many times I was horrible to my parents.
There's also another perspective on that as well, that we tend to build a relationship, particularly in families, and we cannot see change in another person. We always see them as the same way.
Yeah, that is a very unfortunate
it is. I was
psychological block,
yeah,
or conceptual block.
I was talking to my brother on Zoom yesterday, and he's my big brother and I absolutely adore him. And I actually have a rocking chair that Keith found by a bin, brought home, and I've recovered, and I love it. It's really great. So I'm talking to him, I'm sitting in my rocking chair, and I'm doing this because that's what you do in rocking chairs. And he was taking the mick out of me and said, "Oh, you never change, you always do things the same." And I thought, yeah, but you can't see me. You still see me like when we were really small kids. You still see me the same way. Because in his eyes, that is who I am. And he has an inability to be able to see who I am. But on saying that, I'm going to say one thing here. I love my brother. And for me, if he wants to think of me that way, it's fine. Because I am complete in my love for my brother. And I'm going to take that into what I said before about you love your parents. If you are complete in loving your parents, then it doesn't matter how they are with you today, does it?
No. I remember before my dad died, when I was teaching, I would talk about my childhood, and I would talk quite badly sometimes about the things Dad did to me when I was a boy. And then he passed away, and then people were saying to Fiona, "Oh, Keith's dad's become an angel." You know? He couldn't do anything. And I remembered all the things he taught me. We have bicycles, and we have a trailer with the dog stuff on, with dogs in the back, and then we get off onto tracks. We let the dogs out, and we've got spanners in the basket. And if the bike breaks down, I'm fixing the bike, and I say, "Oh, Dad taught me this," and I'm all excited, and I'm so proud about I can fix the bike on the roadside. You know, I don't have to rush anywhere. I can change the wheel. We've got the pump there. And Fiona's pretty good too at it. And Dad taught me how to do this, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of my dad. And he's a Superman again. Now that he's gone.
Yeah.
Think about that. When he goes, when you miss them, when the person you loved as your parent, really loved, no matter what you said about them and how angry you were at them, goes, then you remember as a child that you loved them. And then you remember they were not perfect. But if you are psychologically growing, you realize how you were not perfect. There's no such thing as an innocent child, believe it or not. It's nice, isn't it, that, oh, God bless the innocent children. You say, well, you have about a 2-year-old child, a 2-month-old child. Yeah. I'm talking about once they become cognitive and begin cognizing or recognizing realities and things. Once they start interacting, 2 or 3 years old, they begin to scheme, because that's when we learn to scheme. And children can be very destructive things in families.
How long does it take a child to learn from some parents who have an inability to put their foot down, that if they're in a supermarket and they throw themselves all over the floor, that they're going to get that bag of sweets?
Because we become embarrassed, and we are our fragile self-confidence is afraid of what people think.
Yes.
Basically.
So
we give in.
Yeah. So very, very small children can really soon learn how to manipulate a situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when we don't realise that and count that as or put that into our child rearing skills, which you're always too old when you realise these things, unfortunately. Yeah. I didn't do that. I made all mistakes. You realise it once your kids have left. You should have done this, should have done that. Or if I'd read this book 12 years or 20 years ago, I could have...
or if I'd had my kids last week, it would have been fine.
You've got to go through experiences of mistakes to be a parent.
But on saying that,
yeah.
Okay, the children, your children, my children, still have a choice. And the fact is they have a choice to look at the good things that every parent has done and is doing, and choose to forgive and let go and accept what they see as the bad things. And that is something everybody has a choice. I have it, Keith has it, you have it, all of our children have it, our grandchildren have it. It's a choice.
Absolutely. And I think the most important thing is that choice and the understanding which we've been talking about, which is the understanding, and this is so hard for some people to really accept. Forget the concept of innocent child. That child is an intelligent little biological machine, and by soul machine as well, that brings energies from other times too, and knowledge from other times. So don't believe the story of the innocent child. It's a myth. Think of it as a growing human being that has patterns already ingrained within that child. And therefore you have to begin to understand that child in its terms, and you have to relate to it in your terms, and somehow bridge that gap, which is a whole different story for another time, because it's a complex thing. Yeah. But,
and on that note.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I've really enjoyed giving this talk.
I have too.
Yeah.
I have.
I hope to see you soon.
We do. Just want to say one more time, if you want to change, honesty, acceptance, and
lots of princess tart.
Lots of princess tart. Okay, no, not lots of princess tartar.
Wasn't that the third thing?
No.
Honesty, what?
Choice, choosing.
And of course, it goes without saying, love.
Yeah.
Love is in everything.
Yeah.
But love, don't mistake giving in to anybody or any situation for love. If you know that something is really bad for the child, even for your partner, fight it out in a sense of, but by stand your ground, in other words, and discuss possibilities of doing or arranging that setup in a different way. Because there are always thousands of ways to conduct our psychological life and to change the patterns that we've had, to become more competent as lovers, as man and wife, as parents, as friends, and brothers and sisters, and just human beings. And the one and best thing is to remember, don't blame. Find out the mechanism and fix it. Don't blame. Don't blame self, and don't blame others.
Bye.
Bye-bye now. Take care.